I want you to think about a feeling that's, well, deeply familiar and honestly incredibly frustrating. You sit down at your desk, you're determined to study, to write, to finally just start that big project. You've got the ambition, right? You have the goal, but somehow, 45 minutes later, you're just staring blankly at your phone. You're scrolling through social media, totally paralyzed by this heavy, sinking sense of guilt. Look, the psychological pain of procrastination is intense. We beat ourselves up, we call ourselves lazy, we just assume we're broken. But what if? What if literally everything you've been told about discipline is completely backwards? Today, we're going to dive into the profound science of human behavior. And by the end of this explainer, you're going to understand exactly why you procrastinate and how to permanently re-engineer your life for success. Let's uncover how your brain actually works. So, why do we fail when we try so incredibly hard? We white-knuckle our way through these strict diets, we force ourselves into punishing workout routines, and we try to, just out-willpower all our modern distractions. But we almost always burn out. And I want to just validate that struggle for you right now. If you're battling decision fatigue, or if you find yourself endlessly doom scrolling despite your absolute best intentions, your repeated failure is not a lack of discipline. It's really not. It is not a moral failing. You are actually fighting against millions of years of deep evolutionary programming. And that brings us to a concept that completely shifts the narrative away from all that cringe-inducing motivational guilt. Okay, so the absolute core of this is understanding the law of least effort. This law basically states that when you're deciding between two similar options, people, all of us, will naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. It's just human nature. Energy is precious. Your brain is this highly, highly efficient machine, and it's hardwired to conserve energy whenever possible. So seeking the easiest path, that isn't a human flaw, and it definitely isn't just mere laziness. It's actually a brilliant, deeply necessary evolutionary strategy designed for our survival. But to really wrap our heads around how deeply ingrained this is, we have to look all the way back to the dawn of human civilization. Because this concept actually played out on a massive global scale. Based on the incredible work of anthropologist Jared Diamond, just picture the primary axes of the continents. Think about the massive east-west span of Europe and Asia. Now compare that to the tall north-south span of the Americas and Africa. Why does this even matter? Well, locations along the same east-west latitude generally share really similar climates, sunlight patterns, and seasonal changes. So when agriculture first began to spread, farmers moving from east to west experienced way less climate friction. They could literally grow the exact same crops from France all the way to China without having to constantly reinvent the wheel. And this is where we see the incredible compounding power of a low-friction environment. Because that climate was so consistent, agriculture spread 2 to 3 times faster across Asia and Europe than it did going up and down the Americas. I mean, think about it. You could be the most talented, hardworking farmer in the world, but all that talent isn't going to help you grow Florida oranges in the freezing Canadian snow, right? The north-south route was just packed with geographical friction. But because the east-west route was so much easier, food production skyrocketed, populations exploded, and entire massive technological empires were built, all simply because the environment was easier to navigate. All right, so how does this ancient geography apply to your life right now? Well, we can call this the geography of your habits. Just as the literal shape of the continents dictated the entire course of human history, the shape of your modern everyday environment dictates your habit formation. You might wake up thinking you're making these conscious, completely independent choices all day long, but honestly, more often than not, you're really just flowing down the path of least resistance that was completely designed by the room you're currently sitting in. Which brings us to a realization that is, frankly, paradigm shifting. Every habit is just an obstacle to getting what you really want. Just let that sink in for a second. It's profound. Think about it. You don't actually want the habit of dieting, right? Dieting is just the annoying obstacle to getting fit. You don't desperately desire the physical act of meditating. Meditation is just the obstacle to feeling calm and centered. The habit itself is the friction standing in the way of your desired outcome. And the greater that obstacle is, the more friction there is between you and your ultimate goal. Imagine you're holding a garden hose, but it's bent right in the middle. The water's barely trickling out. Now, if you want more water, you basically have 2 options. Option 1, you crank up the valve to the max, trying to force more water out through sheer exhausting pressure. This is exactly what we do when we try to just pump up our motivation to stick with a hard habit. It completely drains your willpower and just causes way more tension in your life. But the second option? Just unbend the hose. Let the water flow naturally. Stop trying to force motivation and start removing the physical and mental friction that's blocking you. This exact concept actually revolutionized the entire global economy. Back in the 1970s, Japanese electronics manufacturers absolutely dominated the global market. And how did they do it? They didn't just walk in and yell at their workers to try harder. They implemented something called lean production. They relentlessly redesigned their workspaces to eliminate the physical friction of workers having to twist, turn, and reach for their tools. By simply removing that wasted physical motion, Japanese factories became vastly more efficient, and their televisions became far more reliable than American ones. They won the game by redesigning the space, not by forcing the effort. They called this incredible strategy addition by subtraction. And if you look around today, literally the most successful companies in the world use this exact same blueprint. They remove the tiny points of friction that sap our time. Think about the apps on your phone. Meal delivery services eliminate the friction of grocery shopping. Dating apps totally remove the friction of traveling across town just to meet someone. Voice-activated speakers let you play your favorite song without even having to look at a screen. These products deliver this massive dopamine-driven convenience just by removing micro-frictions. They prove without a doubt that making things easy is the ultimate secret to controlling human behavior. So I have to ask you directly, are you trying to build your habits in a high-friction environment? Because we do this all the time. We constantly self-sabotage by trying to do really hard things in the absolute worst possible settings. We try to concentrate on a dense book in the middle of a chaotic, noisy household. We try to stick to a strict diet while hanging out at a restaurant with friends. We try to study while a smartphone, buzzing with notifications, is sitting right there next to our textbook. You aren't failing because you're inherently weak. You're failing because your environment is actively, relentlessly working against you. To fix this, we need to shift from just understanding the brain science to actually implementing some deeply practical advice. The goal here is to prime the environment for future use. I like to call this resetting the room. It means proactively designing your space right now so that the right action is the absolute easiest possible action for your future self to take. You want your good habits to fit so seamlessly into the natural flow of your life that you don't even have to think about them. I absolutely love this mindset from an IT developer named Oswald Knuckles. He once said, "People think I work hard, but I'm actually really lazy. I'm just proactively lazy. It gives you so much time back." See, Knuckles resets his environment constantly. When he finishes watching TV, he immediately puts the remote back on the stand and folds the blanket. While his shower's warming up, he's wiping down the toilet and the counters. He organizes his space for its intended purpose, completely eliminating the resistance for whatever he needs to do next. Because true productivity isn't about working yourself to the bone. It is simply the result of intelligent environmental design. Let's look at how you can automate your own positive behaviors right now. If you want to exercise tomorrow morning, lower the friction. Set out your gym bag tonight right by the door. If you want to improve your diet, take some time on the weekend to pre-chop your vegetables so that healthy food is literally the easiest, readiest option when you open your fridge. And if you want to draw more or write more, don't hide your tools away in a drawer. Leave your pencils visibly out on top of your desk. You are literally unbending the hose for your future self. Now, there is a totally brilliant flip side to this coin, and this brings us to the behavioral inversion principle. Just as we have to lower friction to make our good habits run on autopilot, we must deliberately engineer high friction to choke out our bad habits. Remember, if the brain naturally seeks the easiest path, your job is to engineer your bad habits to be so impossibly annoying, so frustratingly difficult to perform, that your brain simply gives up on them. So, how do we make those bad habits difficult? Well, if you want to defeat phone addiction, leave your phone in a completely different room until lunch. The friction of having to physically get up and walk down the hall is usually more than enough to stop you from mindlessly checking it. Watching way too much TV? Unplug it from the wall after every single use. Seriously. Tell yourself you can only plug it back in if you can say the name of the exact show you want to watch out loud. If you're really hardcore, take the batteries right out of the remote. Or, hey, take the television out of the living room entirely and hide it in a closet. I guarantee you're only going to drag that heavy screen out when you truly desperately want to watch something. What we're exposing here is the grand illusion of willpower. For far too long, we have carried this heavy, exhausting shame of perceived laziness. But you need to release that shame today, right now. The truth is, discipline inevitably fails when your daily systems are just too difficult. Willpower is a finite resource, and if you have to burn through it just to fight the setup of your own living room, you are going to lose. When friction is low, habits are easy. When friction is high, habits are difficult. It really is that brutally simple. As we bring this explainer to a close, I want to leave you with a thought that is incredibly empowering. Redesign your life so the actions that matter most are also the actions that are easiest to do. You are the architect of your own environment. You actually have the power to stop fighting yourself. You can unbend the hose. You can completely create a world for yourself where doing the right thing isn't some monumental, exhausting struggle, but simply the path of least resistance. So I want to leave you with one final, thought-provoking question to chew on. Look around the room you're sitting in right now. Think about the one habit you've been struggling with the most lately. What is one tiny, specific piece of friction that you will remove today? Make your choice, take action, and start designing an environment where your success is truly effortless. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.